We need people who are going to go to concerts. We need people who are going to support the symphony in the future. We need people who are going to go to museums. We need people who will donate to local radio stations. We need people who are engaged enough in the arts to know the importance of them and the value to society. And how they get engaged at that level is actually through music study.
Today I'm talking with Brian Shepard, CEO of the Music Teachers National Association. This is a conversation about MTNA at 150, artists, citizens, and the future of teaching music. Brian, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we're finally having this conversation, and welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is really good to be here. I am excited to be talking with you today. I'm doing really, really well on this end. Lots of exciting things going on. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great.
I caught you off guard, didn't I?
Yes, you did. I'm doing great, and I'm excited to talk to you because I think we've been friends for 10 years.
At least.
I knew you as a member of MTNA, and I really pride myself in being, because I'm one of our few guitar teachers, right?
Yes.
And I came to MTNA through the Seattle chapter, which is such an awesome and lively bunch. I mean, they're so cool. And they really brought me in. And then that's how I started coming to the national conferences. And that's where we met, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've been a member ever since and been on the board and been the Seattle chapter president. So we go way back. We have a lot of history together.
We do. I think, was it the Baltimore conference that we met for the first time, maybe?
Gosh, it might be. Your memory is better than mine, but I think you're right. And I think we connected right away on that, on all the big things about making music and teaching and the importance of it. Anyway, I'm really grateful that you're here. And so what are you excited about right now? What's going on? I know you have a really big party coming up.
We do. We have a 150th birthday party coming up for MTNA. It's not very often you get to celebrate 150 years of anything, but we are super excited. Our actual anniversary date is next December 26th of 2026 is the actual anniversary of the founding of MTNA. And that happened actually here in Ohio, right outside of Columbus, Ohio, and Delaware, Ohio. And our founder was Theodore Presser, who many know of from the Theodore Presser Publishing Company, as well as the Theodore Presser Foundation that supports music initiatives and arts initiatives in the Pennsylvania area. Also many music programs around the country are in a hall called Presser Hall that was funded by that foundation. I know Miami University here in Oxford, Ohio, has a Presser Hall that was funded in the, I believe, 1920s by the foundation.
Wow. And, do you ever just wonder what it would be like to be an independent music teacher 150 years ago? Like, what would that scene be like? What would you be wearing? Would you be going to people's houses? Right. What's your metronome look like? What's happening?
Yeah, I think studios, the look of them has changed quite a bit, even though a lot of the content is the same. And it was really interesting because Theodore Presser and several of his colleagues around the country had traveled quite a bit and seen teachers, and he himself was actually teaching at a college. The teachers who were coming to him wanting to get degrees in music just really didn't have much background in teaching. Some of them played well, some of them wanted to play well, but they really didn't have any background in teaching. So his goal, and he got lots of people around the country on board with this idea that the country needed an organization that was dedicated to elevating the level of music teaching across the country. So from the very beginning, MTNA has been committed to meeting teachers wherever they are in their journey and helping them get to the next level professionally, helping them be better teachers, helping them be better musicians, helping them be better members of society. This has been our goal since the very beginning. And he managed to get people to come from all over the country to gather in Little Delaware, Ohio, the day after Christmas in 1876. And so we are really excited to celebrate that legacy and that continued service to the profession that has been uninterrupted for 150 years. We've gone through 2 world wars, we've gone through the Great Depression, we've gone through now 2 global pandemics and multiple other challenges across the world. To continue to support music teachers and bring music study in the private sector really to an elevated level.
And was pedagogy a thing that they talked about then?
I'm not sure they actually called it pedagogy, but that's really what they were talking about.
Then.
Yeah, I don't believe it was. In all the historical texts, they don't really refer to their discussions then as talking about pedagogy, but that's essentially what it was. And it was really just refining the art of teaching and making sure that this was a viable career for anyone who wanted to go into it.
Was being a mute, so these piano teachers in the 1870s, they were musicians first. And they were
Yes.
that they so they and they hung a shingle or they taught. Did they teach people that were affluent? Is that who took piano lessons back then? Or
It's really interesting because back then, basically, pianos were everywhere in homes. They were not necessarily a total luxury item at that point in time. They were expensive, so not everyone was able to afford one. But homes had pianos in many levels of society, and basically everyone took a little bit of piano at that point in time. And so it was just sort of a family activity because there are no other distractions. At that point in time, there wasn't radio. In 1876, that was the year the telephone was patented. So, people weren't calling each other. So people would gather in their homes and family members would make music. They would sing, they would play the piano. And that was their entertainment. That was their Netflix. That was their movie. That was what they binged on, was music making, because there just weren't any other distractions at that point. So it was a lot more of a household thing to learn piano, to play piano, to have family members who took piano lessons. So, there certainly is an economic barrier of anything that you have to pay for, but it was culturally just something that people really prioritized if they could, to be able to take lessons and have their children take lessons and it be something that was part of family life.
wow, and there was no YouTube, obviously. But
There
there
was
I
no
promise
YouTube.
I'll stop, but this is so interesting, and I can't believe
Yeah,
I've never
no, this
learned.
is really fascinating.
Were there method books at the time then?
There really weren't a ton of method
Oh,
books. That really came to pass really through kind of the unification of teachers across the country, really kind of trying to standardize levels, standardize teaching methods, to standardize, approaches and ideas. So the invention of the telephone, the rise of the railroads really helped jumpstart those dialogues there, because a lot of people were just in these small communities around the country, kind of doing the best that they could with what they had. But this rise in the ability to communicate, with telegrams and things like that, really helped spark a national community that hadn't been possible before.
and if you were a fabulous pianist in whatever community you're in at that time, how would you be fit into society? I'm assuming since you're the main source of entertainment and providing that,
Hmm.
they're probably pretty
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, I think in those days, the high level concert artists were very well revered. I think it was very difficult to make, sort of a worldwide career, but
Hmm.
within their communities, they were very well respected. Music and the arts were very much the center of communities because there simply weren't a lot of other activities. Soccer was not a thing then, and all these other things that keep kids pretty divided with their attention. They're doing so many things. There just weren't as many things to choose from, and people really enjoyed and immersed themselves in the arts and music, and that was just sort of a way of life for them.
Yeah, my first introduction to really knowing it is my grandfather, who in the 30s was learning and he was a concert pianist, but he was also a big band leader. And he just
Hmm.
had this fabulous career and he had such an aesthetic. He was such a center of this very kind of bucolic Shenandoah Valley. It was a Norman Rockwell painting, and he was right in the middle of it. And he had great tweed coats and smoked a pipe during his lessons. And he impacted so many people. And that's obviously a couple generations later, but he had such a cool life and was so loved. And there was aesthetic to it. There was style, it was culture, and it was
Hmm.
community. And I
Hmm.
loved that. And at that time, because it's just a few generations, then there's method books, right? So it
Yeah.
seems like, so this started with MTNA. And I think
Hmm.
that we don't talk about it much at a local level in our organization because we're talking about what's going on now. But it's really interesting to think how much came from that
Yeah,
organization,
when you
Theodore
bring
Oppressor.
people
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
good ideas happen. MTNA, I'm really excited to share that MTNA was, sort of the founding organization for a lot of the other music organizations too. American String Teachers Association, National Association for Music Education, several of those other large national organizations that serve sort of a different segment of a music teaching population, but those were all formed at MTNA conferences. So the organization was really the forerunner of association community for music teachers. And in the beginning, it was music teachers in the public school space, and it was string teachers, vocalists. And over the years, some other organizations have branched off and are a little bit more specialized. But the organization has really always been to help serve as many music teachers as possible.
Yeah. And the story really resonates with me because I spend a lot of time with young people. And for everything that people are worried about, young people that aren't young people, I see them especially interested in pre-digitization culture. Also, I mean, I'm teaching students who are interested in blues at turn of the century before I knew it. A
Oh,
guitar
yeah.
player
Hmm.
usually knows it from the 40s or 50s on. There was a whole world of that before. And I'm sure with the piano is the same ways. I think that there's this huge opportunity for in-person connection, actual pedagogy and guiding and mentorship. It almost seems during the digital age, it's more important because it's one of the things that keeps us human. And a lot of the young
Hmm.
people I know, that's what they're into. They're playing pianos that might be slightly out of tune, but they're in their living room and they've got one and it's important to them. They
Hmm.
have people over. I don't know. I just feel a lot of energy returning to that in real life thing in this digital environment. I don't know how you see that,
Yeah,
but
no, I think that people are reaching the point that they're craving human interaction and they're craving, we're so married to our phones, we're constantly scrolling, and it's an easy habit to get into. And then you're like, well, I wonder why I feel lonely. I wonder why I feel unfulfilled. But it's because we're not having as many community options. And so I think people are realizing that they've got to get back out there. They've got to be engaging with their friends. They've got to be engaging with their colleagues. They've got to be continuing to learn. They've got to be continuing to challenge themselves, whether it be through practice and performance, whether it be through presenting research or any of those things that associations are the perfect vehicle for. If you're a new teacher, you move to a different part of the country, you've got 500 local associations around the country to connect with.
mm,
You've got a state affiliate every single state. So there's instant community of people who know what you're doing when you're involved in an organization like MTNA. And I think that's so important because we've really gotten into kind of a solitary thing like, oh, well, I guess I'll just Google this or I'll ask ChatGPT about this. And we're really missing out when we don't fully engage in the human connection to have those discussions, to learn from one another, to share what we know. I think that's also an important part of associations is not just
mm.
learning from others, but also sharing what you know so they can learn from you. And I think that we're going to see a real change in people, kind of the pendulum swinging back the other way, where we need these human connections. We need coffee meetups. We need conversations. We need to be involved and we need to be there. I think there's kind of an internal feeling of wanting to be part of something that's a little bit bigger than yourself. And that's another thing that associations provide is really this bigger than us community that is, even though MTNA is mostly a national organization, it really connects us internationally to people, no matter what people's beliefs are politically, religiously, whatever. People love music. That's a pretty universal thing. And when we can concentrate on that shared joy and love, it gives us a lot of area to be able to understand each other better and to get things done.
Yeah, well said. And there's a lot to pull apart from what you just said. Oh, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I too am as guilty as anyone looking ahead at an opportunity to go do an event or to go see music. I'll have the tickets and I'll be like, maybe I'll just stay home. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, what is happening to me? It is now a discipline to be a part of something. I had an interview a couple weeks ago with a guy named Joe Bergamini, and I'd met him at PASIC, which is the Percussive Arts
Oh, yeah.
Society. And it was like a different world because I know MTNA really well and I know the piano teacher community really well. And it's a different world. And one of the things that his one big point that he gave to an aspiring drummer or percussionist or artist that really stuck with me, he's like, you know what? I showed up to PASIC for 20 years on my own dime. I flew in, and it wasn't close. It's always, I had to travel to it. All of my connections happened there.
Mm-hmm.
All of the things that opened up. I'm a published author. I've played with Billy Joel. Like all these things that happened in my life,
Yeah.
they occurred from showing up. And that's something that I think is really important is you're going to these events to show up, to be
Mm-hmm.
counted. Yeah, you're going to learn really cool stuff. You're going to see people you don't get to see. But I think that's the thing is it's just a discipline of saying, I'm going to show up. I'm going to be
Yes.
part, I'm going to be active. And then, because what I really see, and I don't know if you see this too, is, and I want to talk about some ways I've seen MTNA be really active and supportive in a local scene, some particular things I've seen in recent months and years. But the ability to come into a place, like you said, to be in a new town and be like, oh, what am I going to do? And to build that community and to become, I have this idea of kind of what it's almost an artist citizen, right? As a piano teacher, you have a responsibility because you're often the person one-on-one who is the safe, trusted person in this
Mm-hmm.
person's life. And when you do show up and the person shows up, takes a lesson, they leave feeling better in some way. They feel more alive, they feel more human. How do you see MTNA? Like, what are some of the initiatives that you, because I know you're doing it, how you're supporting the individual teacher to be that more impactful person in their
Mm-hmm.
community?
It's interesting to use the term artisanal because I love that term. I absolutely love that term. We talk about it a lot here at the national headquarters. We talk about it a lot in our board meetings. We are wrapping up a strategic planning process that's been kind of a 4 or 5 month process where we did a lot of research. We talked to a lot of people. And one of the things that was identified is really making sure that we are focusing on creating artist citizens, that our teachers are not necessarily focused on creating concert performers. Will there be some concert level performers that come out of our studios? Absolutely, yes. And that is amazing. But that can't be our only goal. We want to nurture those students. We want to encourage them. We want to provide opportunities for them. But, most of our teachers are teaching students who will never have a performing career, but who will have a lifetime love of music. And we need to make sure that we are encouraging and nurturing those students too, because we need people who are going to go to concerts. We need people who are going to support the symphony in the future. We need people who are going to go to museums. We need people who will donate to local radio stations. We need people who are engaged enough in the arts to know the importance of them and the value to society. And how they get engaged at that level is actually through music study. Whether they take 1 year of piano or guitar or voice or violin or 2 years, or maybe they're involved in their choir, or maybe they're in some praise team at church or something like that. But that type of exposure is how we create artist citizens. Students who have no opportunity to have that kind of level of exposure to music, not just the passive listening to it in a store or on the radio or through their streaming service or whatever, but actually engaging in music making themselves and learning about it, learning about harmonic structure, learning about how melodies work, learning, major and minor, learning some rhythm and things like that. That's how we're going to create artist citizens. People who understand beauty and recognize it and support it is what the world needs more of. And, we're going to keep serving, high level artist students and performers too. It's not a one or the other in my mind, but I think oftentimes our teachers will get discouraged if they're not teaching a competition winning student, but they're really subtly but long term changing these students' lives. When they come and they haven't done their theory homework or they didn't practice, the conversations and the appreciation that they're learning through that, it's still there, whether it shows or not. Some of the stuff is the long game. And the long game is sometimes hard to internalize and feel. But, I want teachers to be encouraged, knowing that they are making our country a better place long term, even if this student only studies with them for 2 years or 3 years or 6 months, even if they don't get past the primer level or book one or whatever the leveling system is. they're making a difference. And so that's one of the things through our strategic planning process that we want to really make sure that we're equipping teachers to be able to teach students of all levels and to enjoy it and to know that it's a valuable service.
Hmm. You know, I think what I heard you say, and I really like it, is it sounds, what I heard is that if you can take a person from 0 to 1, that person is so much more culturally adept than someone at a 0,
Yes.
right? Meaning I know how to hear structure and form in a sonata, right?
Hmm.
I can tell that this is a major key or a minor key.
Hmm.
I know who composers are. This gives us, it's like reading, right?
Hmm.
And that person that gets to a 1 is going to have a different impact on society. Also, and because I never think about that way, I want to, because that's something I do so much is just constantly introducing and selling to my kids and my students what I think is awesome. Well, this is what you came in liking. Maybe you'll really appreciate
Hmm.
this. Just because I have always seen the aesthetic that music can bring into your life, right? Because it's
Yes.
me saying, I remember in high school, the shirt I would wear, or me carrying around a guitar magazine. It's me saying, hey, I'm here. I'm looking for other people that are like this. And so I've always really leaned into the connective piece of it. But just the fact that these people become people who will go out and buy pianos to have in their home because maybe
Oh
they'll play
yeah,
again someday.
exactly. People who buy a guitar, people who will buy, a
Yes.
ukulele, people who will like all these things are it's a full circle of arts and culture. And there's so much more, I don't have any specific statistics on it, but just anecdotally, they're so much more likely to engage in a lifelong appreciation and enjoyment of music if they've had a little bit of formal music training.
Yeah. And as a guitar teacher, so much of that in my guitar teaching career has been starting at just getting people having, because there's so many different ways you can take guitar from like being
Oh yeah.
punk rock or folk or whatever, or
Hmm.
classical, and they all kind of lead into the other and you can find your way. Just getting that first piece is so powerful because then you're different than a
Yeah.
lot of other people. It's differentiate yourself, but you've also been loved, right? Because the
Hmm.
teacher provides this connection, a safe place to be in the studio and to be heard and to be seen. And I really appreciate how you're seeing the career of music teacher for what it actually is, which is a springboard. And I've always had great joy in my students that didn't become elite players, but became awesome people. And if you do it
Hmm.
long enough, I'm having lunch with one today who's a
That's
filmmaker now.
awesome. Yeah. And
And
that's what it's all about.
and I'm so proud of who that human being is. We played guitar all through high school, and she's real was a great player. But I know that just our time together, for whatever impact it had, I get to see that person be this adult, and I got to be. I'm grateful I was part of that journey, in some
Hmm.
whatever way that is. And I think we need our teachers, and especially a lot of people that are listening to this, are probably in music school.
Hmm.
And it's so pedagogy heavy, and I think, yes, and performance heavy, which is awesome. You're
Hmm.
developing yourself a lot. But if you can really start to see this, what you're really saying is the actual power of music.
Hmm.
And I love that because that just hasn't come up very much, which is what a transformative tool it is. And the best way to nurture a musical society, one that definitely needs more compassion and listening and sensitivity and expression, like more than any time I can remember or my mom can remember in her lifetime. She's been around a long time, is music.
Hmm.
So I think that's it's a beautiful vision and a beautiful mission that you're serving. And I wanted to switch the tempo just a little bit to talk about you. And there's so many things we've discussed over the years, but I don't really know how you got here. And I
Sure.
think it's really helpful because maybe you're in music school. I love the idea that a music degree is so powerful, or studying music or having a passion in music. There's so many different ways it can go,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
there's so many things you can explore, and it sets you up in such a beautiful way as a human being. So, how did you find this route of becoming the CEO of the Music Teachers National Association?
Sure. Yeah. So I was very fortunate to grow up in a home that very much valued music. I was in choirs as a kid, and I was in the elementary school orchestra, which the violin just didn't end up being my jam. And my mom taught me how to read music and was kind of my first piano teacher, although we didn't really do a ton of formal lessons. But every year for Christmas, I wanted to be able to play Jolly Old Saint Nicholas. So we'd like dust that off, and that would be my showstopper for Christmas Day every year. And it was like you'd think I could vary it up a little bit, but I didn't. So anyhow, it was the spring of my sixth grade year. I had just stopped taking violin, and my parents were like, "Well, you have to do something else musical. So you can decide what you want to do, but you've got to do something else musical." So one of my friends from church took piano lessons, and she invited me to her piano recital. And interestingly enough, this was the piano teacher that my brother and sister studied with, and actually both of my parents studied with her as well. So I was the
Oh,
only one of the five of us who had yet to take piano lessons from her. We went to the recital, and I was like, yeah, I really want to do this. So I actually started taking piano lessons the summer between my sixth and seventh grade year, which is kind of late for a lot of people to start lessons, but I loved it. And I wasn't necessarily great about practicing all the stuff that I was supposed to, but I practiced all the time. I just love to play.
oh, you love to play.
I love to play. And
Okay.
one of the things that I really got good at because I just played all the time was sight reading.
Oh,
So while my, long-term recital performance skills weren't great, I was an amazing sight reader. And so that went really far when I was in college. And, I played for choirs all the time. I played
collaborative pianist. Yeah.
lots of recitals and
Hmm.
soloists and things like that. And then also played quite a bit for church along the way.
Did you go to
And
music school?
I
Oh,
did.
you
So I
studied
ended
music. Yeah.
up I ended up through junior high. I had a really great choir teacher in junior high, and she was a very good pianist too. So she really, really encouraged me because I at that point in time just started taking piano. So it was really exciting because in my eighth grade year, so in the second year I'd taken piano, I got to play for the choir at this citywide arts festival. So that was kind of fun.
Wow.
And it was a canon in D arrangement. It was a Hal Hobson choral arrangement, but it was actually in C, so it was a lot easier to play in C. But
Canon and C. Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that was kind of my first real experience publicly accompanying a group, and it kind of just built from there. So in high school, I was very active in the choirs and musicals, and then also played sideline percussion in the marching band, xylophones, marimba,
Oh,
things
you were a
like that.
music kid. So people knew
Yeah,
you as
oh
a
yeah,
music kid.
pretty firmly
Yeah.
entrenched in music. So at that point in time, I was like, you know what, I want to be a high school choir director. That was what I was going to do. And when I was in high school, I also started taking voice lessons from another just fabulous teacher. And she was in her 90s when I was in high school. And this is an amazing story. Her name was Helen Ramsdale, and she ended up living till 107. She died right before Christmas in 2014. And she was teaching two or three students up until November of 2014
No
because she
way.
just loved it so much. And it just really kept her alive. Her son and her husband had both died in the 1960s or 70s. So she had been, just kind of on her own for a while. She had a daughter who actually is still living, but she was just a force to be reckoned with, as was my piano teacher, Marilyn Adams, who was an MTNA member. So that's
Yeah.
actually my pre-college teacher is how I first became exposed to MTNA. And interestingly enough, Marilyn's cousin, Shirley Rout, who was also from Middletown, Ohio, where I'm from, she was the executive director of MTNA before Gary was.
Whoa.
Lots of connections. She was kind of mid 90s. She was the executive director, and she'd been the director of meetings before that here at MTNA. So a lot of really close knit connections to MTNA from the beginning. At that point in time, I was playing for local MTNA recitals. I wasn't like a major competition winning kid. Like I played well, but not fabulous. But I did end up going to school for music education, for choral music education, and did piano
Mm.
and voice as my instruments, and continued to be very active, especially with the choral ensembles and accompanying a lot of voice students was really where I really found my niche. And then was part of an a cappella group that we founded in college that was kind of fun to have sort of that kind of more pop side of music in college. Then it came time to student teach. And I was like, I went to a day of show choir camp this summer before I was supposed to student teach. And I was like, I'm not sure this is for me. There were just a lot of discipline issues and just
Yeah.
like lots of the kids were just kind of going wild. And I was like, I'm not sure this is what I want to do. At that point in time, I called my parents. I was at my summer job and I was on my break. And so I called my parents and was like, hey, what would you say if I added a business degree?
Oh,
This is like the summer before my last year of college. And so they're like, okay, I guess if that's what you feel you need to do. So I ended up adding a marketing degree. So I finished the music education degree that next year. And then I did a summer and then another year to finish a marketing degree as well. And then that really kind of set me on the path. I don't necessarily want to, I don't think my skill set would be best used teaching. And I was definitely not going to be any sort of performer, an income sustainable rate. So I pursued an arts management minor as well, because the coursework actually sort of basically filled out that minor without me having to take anything extra. And that was where I really learned that this is something that is right for me. This is the field I can be working among musicians, I can be supporting musicians, I can be engaging in music on my own and music making on my own. But I'm an administrator. I am very good with details. I am good with communication. I am good with people. And so this is the route that is for me, and not necessarily teaching, not necessarily in performance, certainly. So pretty soon after I graduated from college, one of my friends that I grew up with was here as the director of meetings and special projects at MTNA. And so she said, hey, our executive director would love to talk with you and talk about some marketing ideas for the association. I ended up meeting with Gary Engel, the CEO emeritus of MTNA, who at that point in time, he and I had met just briefly at a couple MTNA events that I had helped as a college student to help organize that were at CCM. Uh, and then it turned out that he decided to create the position of the director of marketing for MTNA. That was a role that wasn't currently a position back in 2003. I'm sort of dating myself now that I say this out loud, but he created this new position, and that was how I started at MTNA. And then through the years, the role evolved quite a bit. And in 2008, I got promoted to being the chief operating officer. And then in 2024, I was promoted to CEO. So it's been, I would have never thought if you talked to me in high school, I would be like, oh yeah,
mm,
definitely going to be a high school choir director. I would never have thought that life would go down this road. But it's really all about connections. I think it's all about having really influential people and my who really cared about me. And those were my music teachers. Those were the people who encouraged me, who really helped me recognize what my strengths were. I will always love music. I will always love playing the piano. I will always love singing. I will always love being in choirs. I will always love accompanying. But what I see my real gift is organizational leadership and bringing people together, helping bring good ideas to fruition, helping
mm.
connect people to brainstorm, helping to implement strategy. And that's, I think, how life ended up getting me to where I am right now, is just recognizing that, just because someone says, oh, you're a fabulous performer, doesn't mean that you should necessarily be a career performer. You should always enjoy it. You should always love it. But I think it's important also for people who are in music school, because I know you said that's a lot of the audience, being open to ideas other than what you thought was first going to be what you were going to do forever. And that is something that took me a while to get through that. And I think my parents would have wished that I would have figured that out before it meant adding on another year and a half of school. But it's important to be open. And I think for teachers who are listening, it's important for you to communicate to your students that there are multiple paths to being in a career that they love in music. Piano dealers are looking for salespeople.
Mm.
There are public school music teachers, there are independent music teachers. And even in the independent music teaching realm, there are tons of teaching opportunities. The world needs more piano technicians. The world needs more instrument repair. The world needs editors. Publishing companies need employees. All the software development companies need people. There need to be people like you, Eric, who are innovating software for teachers. There need to, all these things can be something you love. And I think so often the message is, well, you can either teach or perform, but there are so many things that touch on teaching and performing. And so I think through our members, through our programs, that we can really inspire people to be actively engaged in music, even if they're not in the music profession of any sort. And we can also inspire people that there's a career for everyone within music. Music companies need accountants, music companies need attorneys. You can still be
Connected.
tangentially related to something you love, even if that's not your kind of primary area of focus.
I was just taking notes about all these bullet points I wanted to just follow up from hearing your story because I didn't know it. And I'm really glad that I asked and that you shared it. If you ask 100 people like yourself, their career journey, I'd say 99 of them have this moment that you described, that summer camp. That got me excited.
Hmm.
And that is something we all face. And those can be really painful moments. And you had support through it. You said you called your parents, right? And
Yeah, I was very lucky. My parents, and not
yeah,
everybody has that support system.
yeah. And something else that really resonated with me is that you had the self-awareness to say, whoa, I don't think this is what I want to do. And you start looking out, you're like, well, maybe marketing would be interesting. And you wrap the whole thing up with this idea that there's all these things that you can do in music, which are true. There's all these things you can be connected to it. It's also, I feel a really good friend of mine said this thing to me once when we were talking about, I think it was his kid or my kid going off to college, about our undergrads are really about becoming interesting people. And in a period of time when people are just racing after, like, I'm going to get a finance degree, I'm going to work in tech, I'm going to do this or that. And that's been the thing that's defined the last decade. People want these degrees to get, basically to get money. It's not to follow
Yeah.
their passion because that's been the thing. I really see kids studying philosophy, literature, music, art, like Steve Jobs, because he's become a hero, someone who really had a vision for aesthetic and culture. And really, that's what, and all the tech leaders, right? None of them have that stuff in their house. They're all sitting around talking about culture at their dinner
Yeah.
table. Their kids are becoming really amazing artists. So I love the idea to just add what you said, which is a music degree to not even work in music, to be like, I'm going to be a lawyer with an undergrad as a classical guitarist, and I'm going to be so much more interesting on a resume
Hmm.
when I'm talking to the person who owns the managing partner of the law firm, who knows, who has seen the classical guitarists that I studied with,
Hmm.
right? And we start to make these, it all comes back to being human and making connections. And I love how you shared that story. And I love how you pivoted because people get stuck with an identity. And you said it, that you're like, it took a minute to get used to it because I thought I was going to be this thing. But fortunately, you had an experience that gave you the wherewithal to say, nah, it's not going to be my thing. I'm going to do this thing. And then that turned into a path that you felt really good about. And you were like, this is what I'm good at doing. I'm great with people. And think about how much music that you have tangentially added to the world through building MTNA and through supporting music teachers in MTNA and keeping them in the business and helping them find their way. So that is a great origin story. Thank you for sharing it. I'm glad I got to hear it.
Well, thank you. Honestly, this is a dream job for me. This is
You've said that
getting to
every time
work
we've
with all the
talked.
people that I get to work with, just getting to see the amazing things that our teachers are doing every single day in their communities around the country is what this is all about. And it's so exciting to see everyone coming together. And I think that's one of the beauties of associations and community. There are just not as many opportunities for people to have community. And so I think MTNA turning 150 and having provided community for 150 years, this is huge. I want to build this. I want to grow this. I want to be the community for people who are feeling by themselves or lost or not sure what they want to do with their teaching career or how they can grow their teaching career. That's what we want to be for people.
And when you talk about, I have one more question about your coming up because there was so many tidbits there about the connection between your teacher and being the executive director of MTNA. Did your geography would you say play a huge part in MTNA being part of your path? Like just where
I
you
think it really
were?
did.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it
where.
did. The fact that I early on studied with an MTNA member, and then my teachers in college were also MTNA members as well, and still active. But I think the geography was important too. It's kind of interesting. MTNA has only had a handful of paid CEOs over the years, executive directors and CEOs, and now three of them I think there were like eight, three of them of the eight were actually from Middletown, Ohio, or lived in Middletown, Ohio at one point in time.
Mm.
So it's kind of crazy that that ended up being a place that produced these people who ended up heading MTNA.
Yeah, and there's a lesson there. And this is a
Yeah,
lesson that I teach
yeah.
all of my students, which
Hmm.
is pay attention to what's around you.
Oh,
Yeah, pay attention.
it's all about making connections too.
Yeah.
I would have never ended up in this role had I not met Gary at the National Group Piano Pedagogy Forum. The first 2 years it happened here in Cincinnati in 2000 and 2002. And I helped the director of meetings and special projects who had known from growing up with the receptions, the MTNA sponsored receptions there. And that's where I met Gary. And that's how this whole connection opened up too. Was just some casual conversations that happened at that reception, and then him knowing a little bit about my background and MTNA having a need for someone who understood music and marketing. So
No,
you just never know when you're going to make these connections that are going to lead to literally a life, a career. Has how that has been
yeah,
has unfolded for me.
your purpose will materialize. And
Hmm.
so I kind of picked up three really prevailing messages from just chatting with you that I'm so excited about, and one of them is just paying attention, and also means being self-aware. Like that was the
Yeah.
beginning of your journey, is you're paying attention
Hmm.
to what's around you. This is an opportunity. I have these connections. And the other one is showing up, right?
Yes.
It's making
Showing
the
up is
trip
so
and
important.
show up and
Don't
just
wait for
show
an
up.
invitation. Just
Yeah.
go,
Just
be there, introduce yourself, reach out to people, make connections. Our members want young professionals to be successful. Our members want there to be future teachers who are successful. Our members want to, as they retire or downsize, they want to refer their students to people. So showing up is so important.
Yeah, and you hinted at that at the very beginning when you were describing your high school. And then I was in choir, then I had accompanied this choir, then I was doing this performance, and then I did musicals, and then I was doing piano. It's like, oh, this is someone who, by inclination, you just show up. You enjoy being around people. And it seems like that's where you really fit. And then you're like, so I'll teach. But then you go to do the teaching thing. You're like, oh, that's not for me. And you show up to this other thing. And then you have these connections. So it's an encouragement to wherever you are, whether you're needing a change or whether you're just wanting to deepen what you're doing in your work, is that this is the same thing that everybody who's achieved a success. And by success, I mean doing something that they love and they feel impactful and purposeful doing. They've all gone through these ups and downs, these wondering, what the heck am I doing with my life? Some point, someone tells them or they self-evaluate their skill sets and their interests and they pursue them. And then they pay attention, things pop up. So I just love that. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I have a couple other questions I wanted to ask you, because every time we hang out, it's like, oh, we hug it out. We're like, everything's so great.
Right?
What's up? How many Christmas trees you got up? And so,
Too many.
yeah, not enough. What do you think in your work is a significant challenge or an important challenge that you are focused on and that you think is really attracting your attention and your intention right now?
A big challenge right now is just ensuring that we have teachers coming into the independent teaching profession. We have a lot of members who have been retiring the last couple of years or downsizing, and not as many young members getting into the profession. So we want to make sure that people know that you can make a really good living as an independent teacher. You can really scale your income quite a bit, and there's a demand for it. In our most recent membership studies, about 75% of our teachers said that they either had enough or too many students. So that very clearly indicates to me that in most areas of the country, and it's going to vary based on geography and some economic conditions and some things like that, but most areas of the country need more music teachers.
We see the same thing on a data side from what we do, which is supporting thousands of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it is a very in demand. There's so many perks to it of being self-employed and running your deal and being in charge. And the sky really is the limit. And we see that in so many. So how do you, because this is something I'm going to be doing in the next year. I don't know if I've told you, but I'm putting a book out on the business of teaching music.
Oh, awesome.
And I don't even know if I'm supposed to share that yet. This might,
Okay, well,
anyway,
we'll
won't
keep it
scratch.
between us.
No, so Alfred, I'm putting a book out through Alfred. The plan is for it to launch in MTNA. I don't care. I'm just sharing it.
Yay!
Yeah. So,
Yes, that's the place to do it.
yeah, and I'm really excited about it because it's taking a lot of that data and a lot of those things that we've learned over the years.
Mhm.
And that's a big part of what I plan on doing in the next years is going to music schools and talking about the business side of things. So how is MTNA? I know you have the college chapters. How are
Mhm.
you actively saying, okay, this is an area we need to focus on? How are you talking to them? How are you getting out there in front of them?
Yeah. So a lot of the people are a little bit more predisposed to become a part of an organization when it's part of a group. So we really look to bolster the collegiate chapters.
Mhm.
We have about 200 chapters around the country, and sometimes they go in and out of periods of thriving and then periods of sort of famine. But they are a pretty engaged group around the country. We've got about 1,500 collegiate members total around the country. So we try to engage them as much as possible. We offer presentation opportunities. The Collegiate Symposium is coming up this January 16th and 17th of 2026 at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. That moves around the country, and it is for our collegiate students by our collegiate students. So they do all the presentations. They are the selection committee that reviews the proposals and selects the program and puts it together. And MTNA really just provides some administrative support. So we want to get people involved in the conference
Mm.
process and the community as early as possible. For to help with attending those, we offer $200 travel grants. We actually just upped that. They were $100 travel grants, but they're now $200 thanks to the generous donation of an MTNA member, Thomas Ediger, who passed away. So the money from his estate is going to fund that. That also helps fund travel to the national conference.
Yeah.
So you can apply either for the symposium or the national conference. We also provide free conference registration for the national conference for collegiate members who volunteer. Typically, it's about 4 or 5, 6 hours or so during the conference. They get a free conference registration to attend. This year, for our 150th anniversary, for those who are out of college, where a lot of opportunities sort of dry up with funding from the university or
Yeah.
from MTNA, for anyone who is an active member of MTNA and is 30 years or younger, which is a really difficult time to find money to go to a conference, we have reduced the registration fee, which is over $400 to $150 for that to attend. So if they should, all active members have gotten the code emailed to them that it applies to, but if they didn't get it, they can reach out to us or they can join and register for the conference, even as a first time active member.
Cool. Yeah,
Um,
and I don't want to cut you off, but
yeah.
I just want to reiterate that I know I see a lot of teachers wait for the conference to come close to them to go because I'm in the booth every year. I'm walking
Oh
around,
yeah.
and the Seattle chapter, we're really good. We all
Oh
we
yeah, there's
we
always a Seattle
we have
contingent.
Peter Max there. So we have all this. We have this crew that shows up, and there is something really fun about showing up to the conference when it's not in your hometown. Like
Yes,
it's
and as a
exciting.
group,
Yeah, you
the
take you.
Seattle chapter does an amazing job of creating a social atmosphere. It's not just about professional development. It's not just about competitions and festivals and theory auditions. It's about community. And that's
Yeah.
we're looking to recreate that around the country and just empowering, a lot of our affiliates, I think, this is the mode we've always done. So we have to, have the business meeting. We have to read the minutes. You can do some fun stuff too. It's okay. You can do business and pleasure together as an association and an affiliate.
Oh, there's so much joy in it. We all leave just so happy to have been together and to go see the things, but there is something great about going to a new town and being together. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to see you in Chicago. And I also, before we leave the idea of the local chapter, I just want to also, in Seattle, we recently had a weird thing with a tax thing, right?
Oh,
Where there was
yes,
really
yes.
weird, and there was a
Hmm.
freak out session where all the local teachers were thinking, whoa, what's this thing? There's going to be this new tax on teaching lessons, which was a misunderstanding. It's not great legislation, but it was so cool to see how this is where MTNA can be like, oh, we let our legal team come in. It was so great to see how you all swooped in and helped figure that out with us as a community and as an organization, because it was super stressful when all of a sudden you have to
Oh,
start
absolutely.
having
Hmm.
this weird tax to your lessons. I mean, it's really hard. So really grateful for how well you all at MTNA came in, assessed what was going on, helped us understand it and get through it. So, because it didn't turn out to be that big of a deal, right? We were misunderstanding it. But
And that was a really good ending. And so far, the challenges that have happened across the country have had similar endings. Either it was totally repealed or it was something that wouldn't end up affecting it, but you just never know. And so, we're here as a community to try to work through things. Will we always be able to have a positive outcome? I'm not sure, but we're going to do whatever we can to try to make it happen.
And so, and that's if you're a member or if you're thinking about joining, one of the things I've always really appreciated about MTNA is it's all like they came and grabbed me at first. That's how I joined MTNA as a guitar teacher, right?
Oh yeah, right.
But since
they roped you in and got you president, and
it's a beautiful thing. But I really appreciate that you're so approachable. And so when you're listening, you've got this idea for something to do. It's really helpful to talk to the people at MTNA, and you can tag you. I'll share your socials and stuff like that, because I encourage people to reach out and to share your ideas and to go to the conferences and to talk to Brian, because they want to hear what's going on.
Everybody here in our headquarters is here to help the board, our regional division directors, our directors-elect. We are here for this organization and for the teachers and the members.
Yes, you surely are. So anyway, I don't know. I think you have to run, and I am so great. This was such a great chat, and knew it was going to be. And I hope we can do it again. But I'm going to see you in a few months in Chicago, and it's going to
be here before we know it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
March 21st through 25th.
That's right. And Brian, thank you again so much for joining us. I really appreciate you, and I can't wait to talk again.
All right, take care. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. You've been listening to the 440 Podcast. If you found this helpful, subscribe at Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave a quick rating. It makes a big difference. To learn more about how to run your teaching studio with less stress and more joy, visit Vons.com. I'm Eric Branner. Thanks for being here.